side. But if you have something like Salesforce Data Cloud in the middle, I don't need all those separate connections. If I can just flow, I just want to update my phone number or update my email address or get rid of some of those duplicate records that I'm clearly on different systems. If we could flow data into Data Cloud and let Data Cloud worry about percolating that across all the other Salesforce users, that would be a great thing.
I'm delighted to be joined by the co-founder of DataPal, Iain Henderson. Nobody knows more about personal data than Iain. He's been involved in the whole of the data protection and data privacy world since before 2018, which is when GDPR got launched. So Iain, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about what DataPal is, a little bit of the background?
DataPal is the personal data cloud effectively for yourself. At the moment, how the world works is my data lives at the phone company, the gas company, the airline, the government, everywhere else other than on my side. DataPal gives me a place on my side to gather that and manage that. And I can then use that to enable other people to access on my terms effectively.
So can you explain to me how DataPal works on behalf of the individual and how they manage their data?
Well, I think what the underlying dynamic is that the person has an interest in relationships working well, just as the organisation does. The person doesn't want to see clearly multiple duplicate records getting multiple different emails with exactly the same thing. So when you're talking about a relationship of equals, because you have good tooling on both sides, it's perfectly logical for the person to want to validate that the record the organisation has on them is in fact them. Or actually say, oh, actually, you got my email address wrong. I stopped using that 3 years ago, right? Or I'm just about to move house. I'll give you advance notification of that. So you end up with what I'll call co-managed data, where the individual is essentially standing inside the CRM system as a relationship of equals, maintaining the data because it's now easy for them to do so and because there's now value in them doing so.
So Salesforce has launched Data Cloud. Data Cloud is all about how you aggregate data from third-party systems and pull them together. And obviously one of the use cases is how do we get a single view of an individual? They may have multiple email addresses, they're in different systems. This feels like it's at the heart of Data Cloud. So can you tell me how DataPal fits with Data Cloud?
An individual at the moment has data scattered everywhere over the web with each organisation that they deal with, which can easily be 200, 300 organisations. And the individual has to go separately to each place to update the details, or frankly, they don't bother in many cases, which is why data quality goes down the pan as quickly as it does do. So the current model is one to many from the organisational side. So one organisation with their CRM can talk to 1 million, 10 million customers. But the customer has to go one by one to each of their several hundred suppliers. In the DataPal model, we effectively can say, well, each of those CRM instances or e-commerce instances or whatever instances could connect to person. And that gives the person effectively one to many on the person side. But if you have something like Salesforce Data Cloud in the middle, I don't need all those separate connections. If I can just flow, I just want to update my phone number or update my email address or get rid of some of those duplicate records that I'm clearly on different systems. If we could flow data into Data Cloud and let Data Cloud worry about percolating that across all the other Salesforce users, that would be a great thing.
So Iain, I've known you for a number of years. When you were working at Aegon Asset Management, you're obviously a customer of ours then. You're now building a company, so I assume you're bringing a lot of the principles of good business analysis with you as you build out DataPal.
Yeah, DataPal is as you can imagine, quite a complicated business. There's lots of data flowing backwards or forwards between different parties, lots of security, lots of clouds, lots of technical stuff going on. So that essentially means I need lots of documentation, lots of process maps, lots of reference models, lots of releases, lots of user requirements, lots of technical user stories, etc. So I use Elements, and I'm a big fan of Elements because it draws all of those things together. I have used it to document big Salesforce orgs, and it's fabulous in its day job mode for documenting Salesforce and improving Salesforce implementations. In my particular case, I'm now using it to design and build a business, right, from scratch, which means I need the user stories, I need all the requirements, the process maps, the reference model, the releases. All of it is drawn together into the one place, which basically means I don't have to go to 5 or 6 different apps and then try and collate them in a way that they don't really talk to each other in the first place.
So you've got quite a complex data model there. You've got the individual's data, but you've also got data from the corporation. Can you explain to me how some of that fits together and how you're managing that?
Because we are essentially operating on both person side and organisation side, Salesforce is our much favoured CRM system because we understand it extremely well. So we know how to flow data backwards and forwards between organisation and person. So we have the Salesforce reference model within Elements, and we have our own human-centric data model. So Elements just draws everything together for us.
GDPR was back, what, May 2018? Now that seems like years ago. So what legislation is now driving this move to get the individual to own their own data and manage it better?
I think GDPR was brilliant in the sense that it was global. Even though it was EU focused, it's had a global impact. If you're a multinational corporation, you basically use GDPR as your global standard for where you need to be at. And it brought in a brilliant thing around every data exchange must have a legal basis, consent or legitimate interest or contract. So that was innovative and good. But it's still a protection regulation, whereas I think we're now seeing things move towards more empowerment. Protection is really the table stakes, right? You have to have those basics. So in the EU, there's now multiple ones. There's the Digital Markets Act, which is going to have a massive impact on the big internet gatekeepers, as they call them, the big 6. For example, in my world, data portability is going to be switched on. The customer can get copies of the data that they want from these big 6. You've got other ones like data governance. Data Governance Act is about the establishment of intermediaries. Again, that's also important for DataPal because DataPal is an intermediary that's there to smooth the exchange of data. So the Data Governance Act makes that a solid concept. There is this thing called a data intermediary. So lots of activity, most of it driven from the EU. UK has its equivalents that are kind of not too far behind. But I think what's coming out of the EU will have a global impact.
So where do you see DataPal going? What's the future?
The internet is, or the commercial internet is, say, 30 years old. It's only just got started, right? It's a very unbalanced ecosystem, and digital transformation has really only happened on the organisational side, right? So let's say we're 30% of the way through proper digital transformation, and you can't do 60%, right, or far less 100% without digitising person side. And you can't do person side within the current model, which is all consent based. Consent doesn't scale, never did scale, and never will scale to the volumes that we're talking about going forward. So I think you end up with a genuine digital transformation and what I'll call co-managed relationships of equals. Right, the right person to manage personal data is the person, clearly, when they have the right tools to do so. The right place to manage details on products and services and pricing and outlets and all that stuff is the organisation. And both parties have the ability to flow data backwards and forwards. They know cryptographically that they're talking to the right person. There's an audit log that keeps all parties right.
We've always said that bad data is junk food for AI. So where do you sit in terms of AI? You clearly have spent a long time worrying about the quality of data provenance. So are you skeptic or excited about AI?
I mean, AI, I am on the one hand a believer, on the other hand, fairly negative on it because I'm so deeply engaged with data quality. Right, data quality is. I tend to think most of the global economy is running on low-grade fuel, right? And we see very regular examples of that. So the theory behind AI is fabulous and machine learning and all that stuff. The reality is often very different. Where that matters for JLink, which is the underlying protocol that we use on DataPal for data provenance. Essentially, that guarantees that you know where your data came from. Where did it come from? Where's it going to? On what basis? Under what agreement? And by the way, there's an audit log to keep you right. So we are now getting, as JLink, a lot of interest from AI businesses who recognise that data provenance is a key capability. We did pitch that 5-6 years back, data provenance, and it was kind of like, oh, why would we ever need that? And I think AI makes the difference. So it's now going front and centre. Because we're getting a lot of interest from AI companies. Because needless to say, as soon as you say, well, if you haven't got provenance on the data that entered your model, don't be surprised when your model starts spitting out stuff that you don't recognise.
Iain, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been fascinating getting your insights into data privacy, data quality, data provenance, and I think very relevant as we're moving into Dreamforce and data cloud is obviously going to be a key topic that's talked about there. So if people want to reach out to you, get hold of you, I'm assuming Iain Henderson, we can find you on LinkedIn, and it's datapal.me. So thank you again. Thank you for spending time with us.